I was trying on wedding dresses and I was like, I can't get married like this. Then went on like a mission to lose the weight. I had a PT and they told me to eat 1,200 calories a day. And they were like, you don't even need a full tin of tuna. You can have half a tin of tuna for your lunch with some rice cakes. Lost weight for the wedding. And after the wedding, I was like, okay, I'll just up my calories slowly. The weight was back on me within 6 months. I had like gut issues, which had been ongoing throughout this time, bloating all the time, dairy intolerance, gluten intolerance. I had eczema, felt like sheer desperation. And I just felt like I can't keep going like this. Like this cannot be my mindset for the rest of my life.
Helen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How does our diet fit in and impact our overall wellness?
I think in many ways, it really sets a baseline of how we feel every day. And if we're, eating foods that aren't making us feel great, then that's going to impact like how present we can be. Because, I don't know if you've ever like really suffered with like digestive issues or anything, but when you're like bloated and you just don't feel really good and you're trying to have a conversation with someone, but all you can feel is like how bloated and like annoyed that you feel internally, it just means that you're distracted. It just means that you're tired, your brain fog, you get the afternoon slump. Like all of these things are affected by our diet. Our diet affects our mental health, our mood, like everything. It really is like it underpins it all. And I really like for me, like I have this like concept of like high vibe foods and low vibe foods. And it's like if you, I don't know, like it might be too woo woo, I don't know, but like, there's obviously the vibrations of the universe and energy. And I just feel like something that has grown from the earth is gonna be quite high vibrational. Something that's been made in a factory and wrapped in plastic and put under like, harsh lights and transferred across. It's just like it's not there's no love in it. There's no like good vibes in it. So yeah, I think also on a completely like spiritual level, I think it has that impact as well.
It's really interesting because if we think, okay, what we put into us is ultimately our fuel. Do you know, we go to the petrol station, we put fuel in our car, we can pay for this premium diesel, we can pay for the cheaper diesel, do you know, and whether that makes a difference, I'm not going to start, dissecting the different types of petrol and diesel. However, you can kind of see, are we putting in the more premium food, the more
Hmm.
premium fuel, or are we just grabbing and going and then wondering why, as you say, we have the afternoon slump, we have a massive like sugar rush and then crash.
Hmm.
We just can't concentrate, or we feel super tired, or it can affect us physically in terms of bloating, or even just it doesn't fill us up. We've paid however many pounds on whatever food that we've kind of grabbed and got, and then suddenly we're still hungry, and then it's just annoying because you've spent money on it, but then also it's annoying because you've filled yourself up with rubbish which doesn't actually quench your hunger.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's so many different dimensions to that. And I think the word diet can be quite triggering, really, in
Hmm.
the broad scheme of things, because it can mean, firstly, quite strict rules of just eating greens and just eating like nothing good, nothing nice. And I think when you kind of give the example of the different types of food, it makes a lot of sense. But I don't think you're saying that we can never ever touch a wrapper of something again. It is just that balance.
Hmm.
However, we need to know what we're eating and where it kind of comes from. But then also there's a huge restrictive side of diet and the quick fixes and all of those kind of marketing slogans, which I'd love to hear kind of a bit more about your background into it, because I know that that's something that you've had a lot of personal experience with. And then, it's ultimately brought you to where you are today and made you learn a lot about the different types of food and how it impacts us. So can you give me a bit of background into your journey and your experiences with these diets and quick fixes and what's brought you to your point of view today?
Yeah, so I have been a yo-yo dieter my like entire adult life until fairly recently. I thought that eating like 1,200 calories was the way forward, and we can kind of get onto that. But before I tried that, I'd taken diet pills, I'd done Herbalife, I'd done Slim and World, everything that I possibly could to like lose weight. And the focus was so on being smaller, being thinner, and it wasn't on health. Like this was never a priority for me. It was never, oh, I want to be healthier. It was like, I want to be skinny. Like that was like the driver behind everything. And so I wasn't considering like actually what are these foods that I'm eating. It was more how can I be as small as possible. And it was such a bad mindset, but it's one that we all have, and it was encouraged by personal trainers, like I would have people say, "Oh, well, you can't eat like an avocado in a day because like you'll get fat, but have your fiber one bar after your dinner or have your Haribo if that's going to keep you on track." Like how would that keep anyone on track? Like, okay, yeah, you're getting like a hit of sweetness that you're craving, but actually the thing you're not even gonna need the sweetness if you've had a whole avocado and you're completely like full and satiated and you've got good energy throughout the day. So, basically over the pandemic, I like put on so much weight. Like I was probably at like my heaviest. I was about 20, about 15 kilos heavier than I am now, something like that. Um, and I know that that's not like a complete measure of health, but I really like piled it on. I was like really feeling bad about myself, just really sluggish. And there was nothing really for me to do to enjoy myself other than eat. And obviously we've got this emotional connection to eating as well, which we can come on to. But to I got engaged at Christmas 2019. So then we went straight into the pandemic and I put on weight, and then I was like trying on wedding dresses and I was like, I can't get married like this. So then went on like a mission to lose the weight, and I had a PT and they told me to eat 1,200 calories a day, and they were like, you don't even need a full tin of tuna, like you can have half a tin of tuna for your lunch with some rice cakes. And I listened to that, and I was calorie counting at one point for like over 1,000 days. I'd been calorie counting, and I was stuck on like 1,200 calories and lost weight for the wedding and all of that. It was great. And then after the wedding, I was like, okay, I need to start eating more normally now. I'm gonna have to, start eating just like I'll just up my calories slowly. The weight was back on me within 6 months. I had like gut issues, which had been ongoing throughout this time. Like bloating all the time, dairy intolerance, gluten intolerance. I had eczema, on and off that had been like all over my face, and that had started to come back. Really bad eczema on my hands, like blistered, like bursting, like really bad. And I just like got to this point, like the Christmas after I got married. So this was like, I got married in May 2022. And by Christmas, I was like, I actually can't believe I've got back to this place again. Like, I felt like sheer desperation. And I just felt like I can't keep going like this. Like, this cannot be my mindset for the rest of my life. It's so mentally draining to be obsessed with how you look. And it's obviously not just about how you look, but that's when your focus is on that. But it had got past the point of that for me. It was to the point where I was like, I feel awful. Like I just can't believe that this is how I'm going to feel this way for the rest of my life. And then I just started like in the January of 2023, I found like a podcast about the gut microbiome with Dr. Tim Spector, and just was like, this is it. Like it was titled Why Calories Don't Count, like something like that. And obviously I'd found the same, because even though I'd raised my calories, I was still eating really low calories. Like I wasn't eating very much. And I was like, well, why am I putting on weight when I'm like barely eating anything still? And I was like, this calorie method, it just doesn't work. And then I listened to this podcast and it all just like resonated so much with me. He was talking about the gut microbiome, which I'd never heard of before. He was talking about gut health and, things like, well, the foods that you eat that are ultra processed and you're eating them for calorie reasons, actually, because they're so easily absorbed by the body, you're probably getting all of those calories. Versus if you're eating like a handful of nuts, which to me would never have, that will make you fat, like that's what my thoughts were. Your body can't even really break down all of that food, so you're not even getting all of those calories. So it's just not about what they say on the packet. And I just got obsessed, and then yeah, couldn't stop thinking about it. Started like cutting ultra processed foods out, and started just researching as much as possible, and then decided to do a couple of qualifications in health coaching, and so integrative nutrition health coaching, and then I've moved on to functional health coaching now, just because I found like a new passion. And yeah, and in the meantime, obviously went through like my own journey of like healing the gut. I worked with a nutritionist at that time and she was amazing. And yeah, I've never felt better or looked better at that time. And yeah, that was 2 years ago. So that's where we're at now.
It's cool that through all that pain and crisis and desperation you use the word of, you find yourself this passion, you find yourself this new direction. And it's very much, a happy ending, although there's a lot that you've gone through, a lot that you've had to work through. And I want to just go back to what you said. Okay, you've had your wedding, and then you said, right, I'm aware that I'm not eating a very balanced diet. My calories are super low. You're aware of that.
Hmm.
And you're going to slowly increase them. You said, you still ate healthily. Why do you think you put back the weight? Have you worked that out? What is it? Because I think it's completely against what you would have really thought. You're aware of it. You're like, hey, this, I'm gonna have to be careful. Yet you still put the weight on. Talk me
Yeah.
through that.
So, when I say I was eating healthily, I wasn't. I was eating a calorie controlled diet. Like my breakfasts would have been like two egg whites and a strip of turkey bacon. And I think that I just wasn't able to move very much. I wasn't able to exercise a lot. I was very tired. And also, like I said, these calories, they're not that accurate. I think there's a stat, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's something like, you really should add like 10 to 20% on if you're counting the calories because it's just not realistic. And the foods that I were eating were all ultra processed, so they were able to be absorbed by my body really quickly. There wasn't much nutrients. I was hungry all the time. So I was probably actually eating more than I even thought that I was, but I'm eating way more now and I lost the weight. So I don't really believe 100% in the calories in, calories out. But then I was able to, when I started eating proper foods, I'm so active. I play tennis with my husband. And back then, like we tried to start playing tennis and I was just so lazy. Like I couldn't run for the ball. And it wasn't a lack of fitness. I'd always continued to like exercise, but it was just a real lack of energy when it came to it. And then he commented more, not even a year ago, he was like, "You're so much better at it now because like you're running all over the court, like you've just got so much more energy." And I think that probably played a big part in it. Like my body just had to conserve energy as much as possible. And then when I was trying to increase the calories, my metabolism was also like really low. Um, I do have a touch of underactive thyroid. I think a lot of us do. So that will have played a big part in it as well. So there's just like a metabolism thing, but my metabolism is so much better now, much better.
Can we train our metabolism, or is it kind of once we've damaged it and got it used to a certain level of calories? How do we get that back?
So you can start eating more foods, but I would say focus on like whole foods, but also like just find out what's going on underneath because my thyroid is slightly underactive and I think it's because I've currently got H. pylori. So the journey's still not quite done. Like I did all the gut healing a couple of years ago and now I've got H. pylori, which is like a bacteria that can cause a lot of inflammation. And one of the side effects of that can be like a slightly underactive thyroid. So I'm like working on that at the minute, but I think like just find out what's going on with you. But there was like some supplements and stuff that I took, like natural ones. I don't really like to share them because I don't want people to just go out and buy supplements that aren't right for them. Obviously, I worked with a nutritionist and she decided on these supplements for me, like very well informed. And like some of them really helped to like raise energy and things like that. But yeah, you can absolutely get it back. I think I shared on Instagram. I don't know if you'd seen this, but I had a health test last week and my metabolic age is now 19 and I'm 32. When I was 27, my metabolic age was 31. So there's been a huge improvement there.
Which is amazing when we actually take care of ourselves and take care of our bodies, get to know our bodies. It's not that, you talked about the desperation. This is me. This is it. Like whatever, forever. This is who I'm going to be. And you've got it back. You can claw it back.
Hmm.
And what's your views on exercise? Where does this come into the equation of diet? Is it that we can just eat healthily and we'll lose weight and we'll have or a healthy weight? What factor of importance would you put exercise in?
So in terms of weight, like I don't really like to think about that much. Like I don't exercise for my weight. Like I think that if you're just focusing on weight, the diet is the most important thing, but exercise brings so much more. I'm more about like the longevity lifestyle. Like I want to live as long as possible and as healthy as possible. And I like exercise is huge in that. Like to be able to like stand up on your own when you're old, to be able to carry your own stuff, to be able to just like, get down and like garden or whatever it is that you need to be able to do as an old person. Exercise builds that up. And especially for women, we need to be doing resistance training in our 30s because, it builds up our bone mass. It helps us with when we, reach menopausal age or perimenopause, our estrogen lowers and then our bones get a bit weaker, and having like the strength and the bone density from exercise, that really, really helps to prevent against that. It helps your mental health. It helps your lymphatic system because you're like getting moving. Like I honestly think that people need to be like moving every single day, and it's hard because we live such sedentary lifestyles. Like I'm not gonna lie, I spend like 8 hours a day sitting because I'm always working on my laptop. But around that, I go to the gym in the morning. I go for a couple of walks a day. I'll play tennis. I'll do boxing throughout the week. It's a really, really important cornerstone of my life. I think we've talked about like the diet culture and all this. People really think of it as a punishment. People think of like eating healthy as a punishment. People think that exercise is a punishment. And I don't know where this has come from. Our bodies have been given to us to move them. We've got all this capability. Like, why wouldn't you use it?
Something I've been considering recently is how, when we frame something, a situation in our minds, we dictate the outcome. So if we think, okay, there's a stressful situation coming up, we're going to be stressed in anticipation of the situation,
Hmm.
during the situation, then we're going to have a come down after it. But also, if we say to someone, oh, I've got this really stressful situation coming up, they will respond to you treating it as a stressful situation, which in some ways makes us feel good because, we're getting the deserving empathetic response because it's a stressful situation. However, if we just think, okay, well, I have this situation coming up that I need to be prepared for, and I will prepare for it, but you know what, it's fine, then it's going to change. Not, I don't know, maybe it is very likely could change the outcome. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be the exact same thing.
Hmm.
But it's going to change our whole run up to it, how we respond to it. And it's very interesting then, because the diet culture is the exact same thing. How do we frame it? Is it a punishment? If we treat it as a punishment, we're probably gonna want to find a way to get out of it. We're not gonna have it sustainably in our mind as something that can continue to go. We're not gonna like it. We're not gonna respect it. We're gonna be trying to, okay, I'll get that just as close as I can, and we're gonna fight with ourselves, which firstly is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's just a different way of framing it, and it's so important in that way. Which then brings me on to thinking, I completely agree with what you said about women lifting weights as they get older and the awareness of like the perimenopausal stage and the menopause, how we change in our bodies. There's so much more awareness of that, and I think it's a healthy awareness of it. We understand what's going on a lot more. So how do you think that's changed in terms of diet culture? Is it very much still there? I mean, obviously we're in the age of Ozempic and all of these different quick fixes. So maybe the quick fix is still there, or is that kind of slowly changing in the narrative of you don't need to go on a Weight Watchers diet. You can actually start lifting weights or going for a less processed diet. What's your view on how that narrative has kind of changed in recent years?
I think it's really interesting, and this might be a bit controversial, but I think that the anti-diet culture has also done damage because I speak to people that are like, I don't want any restriction. And I'm like, but your lack of restriction is what has made you sick. This is like my clients that come to me and they've got all these issues and they don't want to give up anything. And it's like, but why don't you want to give up the things that have made you sick? Like, I think that online there's this real narrative which has come from protecting people with disordered eating, which is absolutely relevant and needs to be done. But we're all being treated as if we have disordered eating when actually more of us are suffering with obesity and more people are suffering with metabolic syndromes and type 2 diabetes and all of this. Like, eating disorders are not the only issue out there. So like we shouldn't just tell everyone that, I don't like to say and there's no good and bad foods because yeah, morally there's not good or bad foods. Eating that food does not make you a bad person, and it doesn't make you a good person. Like just because I've had a healthy meal today, that doesn't make me better than anybody else. But there's foods that are good for your body and there's foods that are bad for your body. So let's stop babying people and telling them that there's no good or bad foods. Like what, why do they need to be treated like that? Like you can say, do you know, yeah, okay, I'm gonna go out and have a pizza on Friday night. And maybe it's not the best choice that I could make, but actually for me, that's what I want to do. And I enjoy it and it's good for my soul. So in that term, it is good for me. But then tomorrow, I'm just going to balance it out because I'm going to have like a really nutritious salad with loads of nuts and seeds and chickpeas and all of that. I'm going to have that for lunch. Like people need to grow up, like
Mhm.
in the nicest way possible. Like, and I'm not, and this is not me, I'm not talking about people with disordered eating. Like, they do need to be very careful about what they consume online. It's a huge issue for people. Have to be very careful. I would say that I had disordered eating at one point. Like, the calorie counting obsessively is a form of that. But I just think that, like, being completely I am anti diet culture in that I don't think that the diets that are pushed in diet culture are the right way to push things. I think it's just more about pushing products, but I'm not anti healthy eating. And I think that that is the main thing. We should just be pro health rather than anti diet.
I think the example you used of why are we babying people is like so true in that way. And I think thinking on the fly here, I think that part of it is probably because this restrictive diet stamp that we'll put into our 6-week program is babying us. It's like a school program. It is like a detention program. It
Mm,
is restricting us without giving us any lateral thinking or any movement or flexibility, or it's my friend's birthday, or it's my kid's birthday, or, whatever it is. Or you know what? I feel really terrible, so I'm going to have a chocolate biscuit because it's going to make my day better.
yeah,
And there's no flexibility, which I think as we are adults, we have more flexibility, we have more choice, we have hopefully more wisdom in
yeah,
making decisions. But I think that the babying culture from that dieting and the restriction, and then not being able to actually talk about what is good for us and what's not good for us, because even talking about diets, I think, is quite new because it was quite taboo, really,
mm,
because it was like, well, we don't want to talk about that because we don't want to offend anyone. But then there's this misinformation cycle. But I think it's because it's so restrictive that therefore we've kind of swung the other way. And
yeah,
there's not really that balance of, okay, so what should we be eating? Do you know the
yeah,
people in the middle who are the majority? As you said, there's people who very much have disordered eating, and that's a different section that we're not talking about. The majority of people are a little bit confused in the
mm,
middle there. So
yeah,
what should we do? It's a good question.
yeah. Exactly, and this is what happens, like in the 90s when I grew up, like this was like it was heroin shake, like that was how we wanted to look, and that was overly restrictive. It was ridiculous. I remember like Vogue publishing where you can have a cigarette for your lunch. That was like the diet that they published. So the counterculture to that has been the anti-diet movement, which has probably helped to shift things back into balance. But now things need to kind of come back and settle somewhere in the middle. It's the same with like the vegan carnivore thing, like the veganism went really hard and people were really pushing that for a long time, that now a counterculture, which is carnivores, come out. And the the truth is somewhere in the middle. The health is somewhere in the middle. We can't all look the same. And I think that we need to realize that. Like we're all completely different people. We have different bodies. Like if you follow the exact same diet and exercise routine as me, we would not look the same. And having like that self-love and the body positivity movement, I think that's brilliant because it means that people are embracing like how they look naturally, and I think that's great. So I'm not like completely like slamming it or anything. It's just a little bit of restriction is okay for you sometimes. But no wonder people see it as a punishment when, like you say, like we've been put on these like restrictive diets and this is exactly how you need to eat for 12 weeks or whatever. It just, and with no education around why either. And I was I was never more restricted than when I was eating how I used to eat previously. It was like such beige, like chemically produced, like low vibe food. Like it just wasn't, yeah, it just wasn't good for me. And now it's like all these colors, all these flavors, all these different textures. Like that's the opposite of restriction.
I think the word I'd use is discipline. It's not that we need to restrict anything.
Yeah.
Just being disciplined
Yeah.
about, okay, if I'm gonna have a biscuit, let's just have one. You know? And not because you're a bad person, you're not you're irresponsible, or because it's bad to have more than one. Maybe, okay, maybe say, you know what, I'm gonna have two. Whatever it is, just be accountable to that. Treat
Yeah.
yourself with respect. I think that often we can actually tumble into this disrespect of ourselves
Yes.
and not stick with the discipline that we have set ourselves. Do you know, if we're
Yes.
going to do something, do it. Let your yes be yes.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise, when we don't respect ourselves and what we say we're going to do, then suddenly this tumbles into a very different issue
Mm-hmm.
of self confidence, self identity. Who are
Yeah.
we? Are we letting other people answer for ourselves in what we want to be?
Yeah.
Do we not know that? Like, where is the narrative going? Because suddenly we're letting the Weight Watchers program tell us who we are and dictate who we want to be.
This is exactly like my thing. Like, I really like to teach my clients. They'll say, "Is this good? Is this?" I'm like, "Why don't you find out for yourself? Listen to your body." Like, we are looking, and this is where I was. I was looking for all of the answers outside of me. Everything that I was trying to find to fix myself was outside of me. It wasn't me. It was all these other people telling me what I should do. When actually, when I started to listen to myself and what I wanted, that's when I was able to fall into balance, because your body is telling you what it needs. Your body needs nutrients. Your body needs vitamins. It needs minerals. It needs joy, though, as well. There's just this thing like, oh, I'm a bad person because I got that biscuit. Instead of just thinking, do you know what? I actually really fancy that biscuit today. I'm going to have that. And I'm able to make that conscious decision, but I'm going to eat healthy for like the rest of the day. It's not like, oh, I've had that and everything's ruined. Like, there's nothing to ruin. Like, put the joy back into food again, make it joyful. It's not joyful when it's like coming out of packets and microwave plastic boxes. When you start eating whole foods, you're full, you're happy, you've got energy, and you're not turning to those options as much anymore. So when you do have them, it's actually a conscious decision that you sit down and you really enjoy it, rather than just mindlessly having it because you're so hungry and restricted that you can't think.
Mhm.
Like, I'll go out, like I said, the pizza, like there's like a local pizza restaurant beside us, which is like very like mindful, very healthy. I really enjoy it. But like, it's still pizza, it's still like a sourdough base and all of that. And what we used to do was we would be like, "Oh, I can't be bothered cooking, like, let's go out for dinner tonight." And we would end up doing that like 3 times a week. And then we would feel like crap. And now what we do is we think at the start of the week, when could we go out for dinner this week? Do we fancy going out? Yeah, okay. What about Friday night? And then we look forward to that all week. And it just makes it, the payoff is just so much better. It's like that delayed gratification. It's just so good for you.
Mm.
It just feels much better. It's more enjoyable. And then you don't have that kind of guilt around it. Like, I would never feel guilty about anything that I eat now.
Yeah. I think the more conversations I have, the more I kind of realize that everything's about balance, you know? And it's almost disappointing to just realize that.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the answer to everything: balance.
Yeah.
Balance and being consistent with what you choose to balance.
Yeah.
Basically, no matter what we're talking about, literally, whether it's like saving money or eating healthily or getting fitter or building a business, it's just balance and it's just consistency. And it's really boring when you kind of realize that that's probably the key to, because it's not a quick fix. Even in anything, there's like the diet quick fixes to literally
Yeah.
every element of life. And it's kind of boring when you realize that, hold on, that's probably not sustainable. It's probably going to lead us back to where we are now, but
Yeah.
we've wasted a ton of money and time and energy and motivation
Yeah.
investing in that. So it's quite disappointing when you kind of realize that that's probably what it is. But hey
Yeah.
ho.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's great. Like, when you start to enjoy the journey,
Mhm.
when you start to really love everything that you're doing every day, like, I love going to the gym. Like, I don't think about it. I get up in the morning and I go to the gym. It's not a consideration for me. It's like, that's me taking time for myself before work. Like, that's
Yeah.
like, it's so satisfying. It's amazing. So when you start to actually love the journey because you're doing things that you want to do, not because someone else has told you to do them, then it's actually, that's when it becomes like enjoyable, and that's when the consistency is nice. Like, I don't like getting out of my routine. Like, it really throws me off. Like, I start to like, if I have to like travel for work or whatever, I'm like, "Ugh, like I can't go to the gym today." Like, and that's not like a punishment thing. It's like, this is what I really enjoy doing and this is what I want to do. But yeah, I think consistency is the thing, but everyone is still looking for quick fixes. I see it on Instagram and stuff all the time. Like people message me, what about this supplement? And I say, are you eating a healthy, like 80% whole foods diet? And they say, no. I'm like, well, why don't you start there then? You know, Stop worrying about ashwagandha. Stop worrying about what supplement that you can take. Stop worrying about the mushrooms and the green powders and all of this.
Yeah.
And just start eating like an 80% whole food diet and it'll change so much for you. And then you don't need to spend the money on these supplements.
Yeah. And also we dictate and create our routine. I think often for some reason, is it that we don't trust ourselves or we don't feel like we know enough, or perhaps we just have grown up in quite a rule-based school
Mm,
education background. So we feel like we need to have someone else. We can't enjoy, like, gosh, imagine if we enjoyed exercise.
yeah.
Gosh, imagine if we enjoyed what we eat. It's this weird, I'm sure, like some psychotherapists would have some term to define it, of needing to be miserable, needing to make ourselves have that restriction.
Mm,
Where is that part in our brain that says, hold on, you can't enjoy your routine. You can't enjoy getting up early. You can't enjoy this. You can't enjoy that. And ultimately, if we really like working out in the evening and getting up an hour later and it fits into our routine, that's fine.
yeah.
If we really enjoy getting up early and going for a walk before work, that's fine. We get to create, like, this is the only time that we are going to be here, that like this day this year, and then tomorrow the only day, it is not a trial run. So
Yeah.
make ourselves miserable in the meantime because of some outsourcing
Yes.
to other people who might not even know us. They might just be like an automated, goodness, it could be AI creating
Yeah.
a plan that we're making ourselves miserable with. It's quite, I wonder where that's come from, because I think it's quite a conscious, subconscious decision. If that isn't
Yeah.
too oxymoron. Like, yeah, it's weird. It's weird that we make ourselves, and we feel like we have to be miserable in
Yeah.
order to get anywhere.
I think you've hit the nail on the head with the routine. Like in the UK, we have this system. You go to school, which you're told when to pee, when to have lunch, when to think, when to do everything. You leave school and you either go into work or you go into university. And again, you've got that structure, maybe less of a structure in uni, but you still have these expectations. Okay, that now this is the next step. Now this is the next step. And like we're told what to do at every single point in our lives. And I am really coming up against this right now. Like I have worked for years. But then in the last 2 years, I've started my business. And I just feel like where I am currently, like wellness does not come easily or naturally. It's something I have to fight to achieve. And I want to be somewhere where it flows. I just want to be somewhere where it is part of everything that I do. And I'm taking a career break at the end of this month, so I'm going to Costa Rica to one of the blue zones, to live there for nearly a month, and then I'm going to go to Mallorca and live in Mallorca for another month, which obviously is that is a privileged position that I'm in to be able to do that and just take that money, like that time off unpaid. But I need it, like my soul is crying out for it, and I just think that all, like, not to get too deep, but I think it's a capitalist society. I think that the capitalist society wants us to be mindless working drones, because if we are not that, what benefit do we have? So just do what everyone else does and just don't think about it. And I think in the UK there's a big, don't the tall poppy syndrome, where they like to cut people down if they're trying to better themselves or put their heads out above the rest. When you start exercising, people are like, oh, like you're so good, like, oh, I couldn't like do what you do, like get up early and go to the gym. Or if you eat healthy, like there's this advert on the TV that angers me no end. It's like, I think it's a Miller Lite advert. And it's like this guy like cracks open a Miller Lite, and then this woman he works with is like, oh, look at you being all healthy. And honestly, I have to switch the TV off because it it really rankles me. Like it really, really pisses me off. I just think like, but people do say that. They do make those comments because you're reflecting on them, what they're not doing, and it makes them feel bad about themselves. So they have to make a comment about what you're doing. Like, oh, but you're just so disciplined. Like, you've got time to do that. Like, there's always these things that people say that just make these excuses because not only can they not be happy, but like you shouldn't be either.
And I think a lot of that is probably a defense mechanism. It's nothing actually to do with you.
No.
It's a reflection of maybe they feel a bit convicted. And I don't mean this to kind of sound like in any way there's a superior and inferior party in this.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting conversation. Why do people find it so irritating to see
Mm.
someone living in a different way than they do? And it is interesting what you said about the capitalist society. Certainly you can see that, it's not really set up. We work all daylight hours in a general job that a lot of the population do. And it makes it quite difficult to be outside, especially in winter, and enjoy that time. 2 days off out of 7, like that's okay, but it's not balance.
No.
And it is that struggle. And obviously there's a lot of things going on in the world and a lot of pressures and worries, and the cost of living is rising. So maybe we can't take time off, maybe we can't buy healthy food. And it is hard. And it's that education part that maybe our brains are so full. That is, and social media as well scares me
Yeah.
how much it fills our brain without us even realizing. Um, but yeah, maybe it's trying to simplify it because there's so much information out there. We're now in the misinformation era because no one actually knows, again, what we're saying, the middle ground of people. Who's
Yeah.
educating them? Where do we go? And
Yeah.
absolutely, there is experts for everything, and that is amazing that we have so much access to experts all around the world for people who have real issues that they need to fix, but people who perhaps are, dare I say, normal, and I use that very cautiously, that word, because what is normal?
Yeah.
When you were talking about society, I immediately think of like 1984. I really remember reading that in school, and I've read it a few times since. I just find it fascinating, and especially with the developing technology, and COVID was a specifically monitoring time,
Mm.
and it's really interesting, I think. And I'm not suggesting that we're in a 1984 era because obviously it's a fictional book. However, it's so interesting just to think we're not that far from it in many ways. And it's very restrictive and it's very heavy. So why are we implementing our routines to be really heavy? The
Mm.
things we have to do, like we have to do it in work, no matter where we live. We have to do this to get this money to then buy food and whatever. Like, that's fine. But it is just an interesting reframing. Here we are, we're reframing again, back to the start. So yeah, super interesting that you're taking a few months out and just, I guess, getting to know yourself again, breathing and
Yeah.
processing. Processing is such a rare thing in this world that we have time to do because you have to actively kind of step out of the chaos to have time to do it. And you've mentioned a lot about the processed, ultra processed food, and I feel like we've teetered around the edge of it. So let's dive right into it. What's your view on ultra processed foods? Firstly, I'd love you to just list some of the ones that we wouldn't really know about. You did a video on soy sauce, and I was like, oh my gosh. And yeah, just tell me about it. Like, what do you
Yeah.
what do you think?
People are very angry about the soy sauce video. They don't like to be told that, and fair enough, but then just, scroll on if that's not what you want. But, you know, so ultra processed foods, for people who don't know, they are there's not really an official definition, but a scientist in Brazil, Carlos Monteiro, discovered them with like a team of researchers and started to like look into it, and then they came up with this food classification system. So there's whole foods, which is like an apple, and then there's like culinary ingredients, which would be like olive oil. Then there's processed foods, which would be like yogurt, or cheese. And then there's ultra processed foods, which are like chicken nuggets, and I'm talking chicken nuggets that are like, you don't know what's in these. Like they have like long lists of ingredients, normally anything over kind of 5 ingredients. They have like ingredients that you wouldn't be able to buy in the shop or make yourself. You would never be able to replicate this in your kitchen with those exact ingredients because they're very, very chemically manufactured. Um, Sometimes they'll have misleading health claims, so like high in protein, a source of vitamin D. These are all there to distract you. That's marketing. And they're just really chemically soft. Like they're so processed that, like I said, like your body absorbs them really quickly. There isn't that much nutritional benefit to them. And we're speaking broadly here because we can talk about protein powders and things like that. And I was listening to one of your podcasts where you were talking about like protein powders. But they just, I'm not saying that you should never have them. Like but there's just these little swaps that you can make, and like the soy sauce was one of them. So I've showed these soy sauces, and one of them was like water, sugar, soy sauce extract, antioxidants, preservatives. And the reason for that is they've taken the real soy sauce, which is made with water, salt, wheat, soybeans. They've taken that, then watered it down further. Then it doesn't taste good. So they have to add more salt, they have to add more sugar. And then it's not shelf stable because it's no longer a fermented product. So then they have to add the preservatives in. Whereas you could get the Kikkoman, I think it was, the soy sauce, which was just water, salt, soybeans, and wheat. And that was it. And it was a fermented product. It didn't need the preservatives. That was all that was in it. So basically, they're taking the Kikkoman product, watering it down, and then altering it because it doesn't taste good anymore. So that, like, there's like Philadelphia, like soft cheese has like carrageenan in, which is just, I think a recent studies just come out linking it to like certain types of cancer. And obviously, like, nutritional studies are just like, you cannot get a study for everything on nutrition. They're really hard to do. They're hard to replicate. They're expensive. And the people who can pay for them tend to be the companies who are making the products. And when a study is done that is funded by a company that's making a certain product that's being studied, they're 7 times more likely to produce a favorable result. So again, you can't even really trust the stuff out there. But you can get like Tesco soft cheese, like the own brand or whatever, and it doesn't have anything else in it. It's just like soft cheese, and that's all it is. Plant milks are a big one. I fell for the vegan meats are a better alternative for you than actual meat. But they're full of like maltodextrin. And again, speaking generally, like the majority of the ones on the shelves are full of like different preservatives, colorants, flavorings, like all of this stuff that we just don't know what is in it. But you can still, like, there's plant milks. I actually prefer plant milk to milk. I've never really liked milk. So I'll have Plenish, which is just like cashews, water, and salt, as opposed to like something that has like gums and emulsifiers and things like that in. And none of these things are put in for our benefit. They're put in for the benefit of the manufacturer so that they can keep them on the shelves for longer, make more money out of them. And like they also make them, they can be quite addictive, like the mouthfeel, the flavors, the way that they like react to the dopamine pathways in the brains. They make you want to eat more and more. And there's neuroscientists working for these companies that are figuring out what is the exact amount of dust on a Dorito, the dust flavoring, that makes them eat the whole bag. Like what's going to keep people lighten up as much as possible. So then again, it comes back to the whole calorie counting thing. If that's what you're eating and you're saying, okay, I'm going to have like 80 calories of these Doritos or whatever, like your brain, these are manufactured to make you eat as much as possible. So you have to have some either really sheerly strong willpower, or you should just stop eating them and just go for something else. But like, I'm not saying it's completely out of people's control, but they don't know what's happening to them.
Mhm.
And it's just really, it's really insidious. Like there's some really good documentaries on it for people. Like there's one um the BBC did recently, Why We Can't Stop Eating, really good. The book Ultra Processed People, really interesting. And it's just the tactics that they use. You can't believe that they get away with it. Really.
It's hard, like you're saying about the different types of soft cheese, and it's literally the same product, yet one of them, the cheaper one, is less processed. And it's when you kind of put it like that, you think, gosh, well, I don't have time to stand in the supermarket and look at all the different ingredients. It's really difficult to know, and that's one thing. Okay, now we know if we're buying soft cheese, we know what we want to go to, but then we go on to the next thing, yogurt, like high protein yogurts or whatever in the little tubs. Are they just full of rubbish? Do they even have protein in them? Like that's something that's like sprung to my mind. It's really difficult in this way because you're kind of
Yeah.
trying to make, okay, the protein choices, the healthy choices, maybe I'll get yogurt instead of ice cream or whatever people might have in their mental kind of viewpoint on it. But it's quite confusing when you kind of say that. But actually when we say, well, if it's come from the ground, as you said, a bag of carrots is not going to be ultra processed because it's literally been grown from the ground. And let's
Yeah.
give it a good scrub before we eat them. But that's a good way of doing it. And then it gets a bit murky, I think, in the middle ground part, but just
Yeah.
simplifying it again. perhaps just takes that onus off us. If we're trying to work out in the bag of crisps if it's processed or not, or how bad it is, it's a bag of crisps, it's probably not great for you. So
Yeah.
maybe have them, but maybe just don't have them every day.
Yeah.
Maybe that's actually how simple it is. We're trying to overcomplicate it again of getting the least bad option. When
Yeah.
actually maybe we should just change our viewpoint on it.
Yeah, I mean, I've never ate so simply as when I stopped eating them. Like before, I was like making all like the Slimming World meals, the fakeaways, all these different ingredients that you'd have to go and read all the backs of. Just have a steak and like a salad and some potatoes. Like just have some rice and like chicken and make a sauce with like tin tomatoes and herbs. Like you don't get a flavor sachet. Just get some like actual herbs, like fresh ones or dried, and just like simplify it. Yeah, I think again people just want like they want to be babied sometimes with it, people say to me, what about this? Is this bad? Is this bad? I'm like, read the ingredients, just you know what the principles are. Just read the ingredients if you want to, but actually just focus on the whole foods.
Mhm.
And people will say like, oh well, cutting an apple, processing it, blah blah blah. Like that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the ultra processed things that are made in factories. And we could get on to glyphosate and all of the pesticides and that kind of thing, but
It's
maybe that's a
terrible.
conversation for another day. Let's not overwhelm people. I'm just like, do you know what? If I can get organic, great. But I do all of my shopping in a market and it's not organic. It's cheap as chips. Like I do all like my fruit and veg shopping. So I just wash it with like some baking soda and water. And then I'm not that worried. I would actually rather people just eat fruit and veg than worrying about whether it's organic or not. That's something that can just come later. It's just focus on the whole foods. You don't grass-fed beef is obviously better than factory farm beef, but factory farm beef is better than like a microwave meal with like 35 ingredients in it. I just think like just small steps. You don't have to like become like a homesteader immediately. You can work your way up to that, and we're still on our way there.
I think you just said, just eat a steak, salad, and potatoes. Literally summarizes it. Suddenly it's like, okay, that is we know what that is. We know how to do that. It's fine. And it can just be so complicated because again, it can't be that simple, surely. Like it can't
Mm,
be. It can't be that simple. There's a whole industry, multi-million pound industry, multi-billion pound even, that has gone span for generations and it's all about all these different things. It can't be as simple as just eat some steak and, get on with our life. It can just get so complicated. And ultimately, as you said, as long as we're trying our best and being
yeah.
aware of it, then it's okay. It's not terrible. And I want to just, before we close, hear a bit more about the next 2 months for you. Would you describe it as like a cleanse or like what's your view on it? What's your intentions with it and why have you chosen to do it? Because it's quite a radical choice to just suddenly, yeah, it's a lovely choice, but what's made you do it?
I honestly like I said, like my soul is crying out for this. Like, so I went on like a spiritual retreat in Ibiza last year, and just all of this stuff came out. There was like a lot of like cleansing and like thinking about like why I have these certain things about me from like going back to like when I was like in the womb, like stuff came out, and it's just like so fascinating. And like that was like one step in the journey, and I just having to come back to like work, come back to the 9 to 5. I was like, I'm not made for this anymore. And I just feel like I'm not able to be a human being. Like I feel, I want to be barefoot on the grass. Like I want to swim in the sea. I want to just not be it's this laptop. Like I'm tied to this laptop all day every day. And I am still planning to do like my business and stuff when I'm away. Costa Rica, I'm not. I'm taking a break, but we're going to Spanish school when we're there.
Oh, amazing.
So I'll get into that. But yeah, I just feel this real calling to just slow down. I've been studying for the last 2 years as well. I've got a full-time job, I've got my business, and I'm studying on top of all of that. And I'm just reaching this point where it's like, okay, what's the next stage for me? And like me and my husband, like we talk a lot about moving out of the UK. Like, we've got like his family have a place in Mallorca, and we spend a lot of time there, and that to me feels like the next step. Like I'd like to go there. even for like 8 months of the year. So this came around when we were kind of thinking about, right, let's take 2 months off and go and live in Mallorca and see if it is actually somewhere that we really do want to live, or do we just enjoy it because we're on holiday when we're there. And then it kind of mutated a little bit where we were like, well, actually, we've got these 2 months off. Should we go somewhere a little bit further afield? And my husband was like, well, why don't we go and do like Spanish immersion in like Costa Rica? And I was like, yeah, okay. Like, I was just like straight on board. He wasn't always completely on board. It was his idea. But then he was like, should we not? And I'm like, no, I'm all in. Let's do it. And I was always like obsessed with the blue zones. Like, when, like, through the pandemic, I started getting really into like wellness and spirituality and things like that. And the blue zones were one of like the first concepts that I'd heard of. So these are the places in the world where people live the longest without illness. And I'm so about longevity. Like, I feel like I want to have as much time on this earth with my husband, with my friends, with my family, the people that I love, for as long as possible. And I want to be as healthy as possible. So I was like, we could go to one of the blue zones in Costa Rica. Like, let's do it. And yeah, so we're going to Spanish school in the mornings. I think it'll be in the mornings. And then in the afternoon, they take you and you do yoga, you do surfing, you do like cooking classes, salsa lessons, like all in Spanish. And then that'll give us a good base of like being able to get by with a bit of Spanish when we're in Mallorca. So then we'll go there, and that's where I'm planning to just kind of like have a bit more of a structured routine with like I'm going to do some of my business stuff, but also I just want like time. I just this is it. Like, time to me, like being rich is being rich in time. Like, I feel like every day is the same. The days rush past. Like, I don't really get to spend much time with my husband apart from our walk in the evening and then like eating dinner together and then watching TV together. And I just feel like every day the years are going too quickly and it frightens me. And I just want everything to just slow down a little bit and just be a person, just be a human being.
Hmm. Yeah. And actually, I mean, it's kind of cheesy, the line, like, be where your feet are at. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are saying that, but it means that we're stopping. We're not just looking ahead. And I guess a lot of the rushing of our lives is completely manufactured by us.
Yeah.
Why are we rushing? Do you know? Why? Well, why are we like, are we enjoying the journey? Because
Yeah.
ultimately, the journey is kind of all we have in terms of our time on earth is, do you know, this is it. And let's make the most of it and the best of it and get things done and be a responsible citizen. However, don't rush endlessly for absolutely nothing. Rush
Mm.
to the next day where you will rush the next day, to you rushing the next day, to you having the weekend, to then you rushing into Monday, and then so on. Like, it doesn't mean you don't need to be efficient or productive or successful, or that you need to move abroad. You absolutely can, but you don't need to. You can
Yeah.
just decide, hold on, I'm just going to be present now. I'm going to have my coffee outside. I'm going to do this, do that. In terms of just being present, where it doesn't need to be this massive, elaborate routine. It's just having eye contact,
Yeah.
looking away from our phones. It's
Yeah.
actually that simple. I think it's just like the balance and consistency thing, that realization of a lot of it's just actually simplifying it,
Yeah.
because the evolutionary biology side of life is something that I just find really interesting. How are we, like, how are we used to being? How is our brains actually designed? And it's not for this bright screen or this like millions of content pieces. And it's amazing, that we have access to a lot of good things. We've a lot of entertainment, and a lot of the reels are really funny, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But it's just actually simplifying that, putting it down, reading a
Yeah.
book, or just sitting, look at the wall and, see what thoughts come to you, what ideas come to you. And boredom's actually such a great thing.
It is. It is. It's great. And it allows for creativity. I think there's like some kind of stat where it's like we get more information in the first 10 minutes after waking up than our great grandparents got in their entire lives. Like, we are not, like, the human body is not evolving as fast as the technology is.
Yeah.
It's not, what is it doing to us? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to turn around at 80 and be like, where has my life gone?
Yeah.
Like, this is, like you say, it's not a trial run. We've only got one life, and it's for living. And is commuting in a car or whatever, commuting to work in the morning, sitting at a laptop all day, you're not even taking a break for lunch because you're so busy. that, and then like you have to leave, you come home, you like stick something in the microwave, and then you sit on your phone and you scroll and you ignore the people in your life, and then you watch TV and then you go to bed and then you do it all again. Is that what we're gonna look back on and be like, yeah, I'm glad I did that? Like,
Mm.
to me, it's just not. I just can't, yeah, I can't stand it. I can't do it anymore. I just
Yeah, it's really hard because it is that catch-22 of that is the way the industries are set up. But I think it's just taking time out, as you say, feeling human again. And what makes us feel human? What do we actually enjoy doing? Not because we should do it, but
mhm,
just incorporating that into our lives. And if we can take a break or take a change or say, think about what you want to look back on your life to be. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to do? Not for some successful plaque that someone's going to put on a
yeah,
bench, but actually, what are we going to enjoy doing? And I
yeah,
think that's exactly it. We absolutely can do all of these things and commute and work and do all of this, but don't rush it. Like, just
yeah,
enjoy it. Like, actually make the little moments enjoyable because the little moments are what makes up the majority of our lives. So it
mhm.
is wow, this has got really I love this very deep turn
Very deep.
it's gone to.
People are gonna be coming on for like health advice, and I'm telling them to quit their jobs.
This whole thing about feeling human, if we just have these small talky conversations, not that this is small talky in terms of like talking about health is very important, but you know, I just think it's so important to just have this like actually what is it all about?
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
where are we going? Because yeah, it's just basically the most important thing. So, yeah.
It's not about, you know, the newest car. It's not about the biggest house. It's not about having all the designer bags. It's not about getting the new clothes. It's not about showing off to other people. It's about being a human being. And you're not made up with the things that you own. It's the things that the way that you can make people feel and the way that you can make yourself feel. I think that's like the most important thing. And, I don't want people to listen to this and be like, well, I can't do that because I can't take 2 months off work. Because I understand that is a privileged position that I'm in to, be able to save money to do that. But it's like you say, Emily, like, what can you do around the things that you have to do to just make it a little bit better? Like, can you get up half an hour earlier and sit outside and have a cup of tea? Like, can you put the phone away at night? Like, leave it out. We don't bring our phones into the living room. The phones stay in the hall. We don't bring our phones into the bedroom. They stay in a separate room. Like, why do you have to be in bed on your phone? Like, why don't you connect with the person who's next to you? Or if you're on your own, read a book or, do a meditation. Like, just, you don't have to always be distracting yourself, I think.
What a lovely note to finish off on and something to just ponder, I think. How can we apply it to our lives and just be a bit more present and chill? Like, let's just chill out and put the screens away and be the people who we are inside. Let that shine through. How can people follow you online and keep up to date with what you're doing? Obviously, you've got a very exciting few months ahead. Where
Yes.
do people go?
So my Instagram is at wellness effect underscore, and I think it's the same on TikTok, probably just wellness effect, and YouTube as well. I'm gonna really try and do some YouTube content when I'm away. And I've done like a health test before I've gone, and I'm gonna do one when I get back as well. So if you want to like see how my health has improved by doing this, like, yeah, definitely follow along. And my website as well. Just I've write a blog. I've got it's just wellnesseffect.co.uk. So thank you.